guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to any new watchers. So today we are talking gap years. So in September I will be going into my second year at university, but before I started I did take a gap year. So I thought I'd make this video to share my gap year experience with you guys and also to help you plan your own gap year as well. Now obviously Corona has messed all of us up, and so your plans might be looking slightly different now to what you had originally planned, for example if you wanted to travel. But I want this video to show you that there are so many things you can be doing even if you can't travel. Before I start the video properly, I just want to say that of course everyone takes gap years for different reasons, and for some people they will just take a gap year just for a bit of a break after study, which is absolutely fine. But this video will be aimed at people who really want to fulfill their gap year. So first of all, what did I do in my gap year? So the first thing that I did was to get a job, because I knew I needed to save for uni, and I knew that I also wanted to do a little bit of travelling in some capacity. So I actually started looking for a job in June, and I didn't start until October. So that gives you guys some idea about how early you need to be planning this. That job I still have now, and it's actually just working in the kitchen of my local hospital. It's on a bank contract, which was absolutely brilliant for my gap year because it means that I worked when I wanted to work. So if I wanted a month off to travel, then I could have had a month off to travel. Now this isn't my dream job, I don't want to do it for the rest of my life, but for my gap year it was absolutely perfect. The only slight downside of having a bank contract is that you don't get protected pay, so you don't get holiday and sick pay, but you do get a little bit extra every month instead of that. So you kind of have to weigh up whether you want the protected pay or the flexibility in a job, and for me during my gap year the flexibility was more important, so the job was just perfect really. So I tended to work between about 20 and 25 hours a week, but some weeks it was literally 7 days a week. It just depends on when they were short and when they needed me in. I knew from the start that I would have to work to save for uni because I only have a really tiny student loan. But I think the fact knowing that I was also working to save to travel and do other stuff that I wanted to do really helped me get up at like 5:30 in the morning. So other than getting a job, I also did do a little bit of kind of travelling. I took my gap year with my boyfriend. We both decided that we just wanted a year off before uni to be able to do other things, to have a little bit of a break. And so we decided to go to Thailand. It was literally just for 10 days and it was more of a holiday than like your traditional backpacking travelling. But I am so glad that we went. And we didn't go until March, so that gave me from October to March to save up to be able to go, which was brilliant. We also then had just a week in Mallorca, and it was kind of out of holiday season, which was quite nice because it was still fairly hot, but there were no screaming kids running about. And then to finish my travel in my gap year, I went to Amsterdam for 3 days with one of my friends from my sixth form, which was really, really lovely. I've done a video on that as well, so I will link that in the description. Now, I'm not going to put in this video how we planned Thailand and did it really cheaply or anything like that. I am going to do that in a separate video because it would just make this one far too long. So apart from travelling and working, I also did a bit of volunteering. So I actually took A-level French, and I decided that I was going to go back to my old high school because I went to a different sixth form for my A-levels. I went back to my old high school and I tutored 2 A-level French students there. And then the last kind of big thing that I did during my gap year was to set up like my own business. So again on the French theme, I designed a beginner's French course. I then made flyers, handed them around my local primary schools, and I taught French to 6 people over 2 days. So that's what I did during my gap year, but you're probably thinking, how does that help you? Well, obviously I am happy with what I did in my gap year, but there are always things that I could have done differently or could have improved on. So I'm going to go through now some things that you guys could do during your gap year as well. The first thing you're going to need to do is plan really early, and I cannot stress that enough. It is so important to plan early because you need to decide what you want to do to then know if you need to fund that. For example, I mean, I gave you the example earlier that I applied for my job in June and I didn't start until October, so that was a long time. I also think it's such a misconception. Some people assume that people take a gap year just because they want to travel. This is not the case. There is so much other stuff that you can be doing during this year to enhance your CV or your UCAS or just your life generally. So what can you do during your gap year? When you're thinking about planning what you want to do, I would take a 60-40 approach, and by that I mean that 60% of what you do should be to enhance your CV or your UCAS or your life, and the 40% should be things that you want to do for your own enjoyment, because inevitably the things that you're doing for your own enjoyment should give you skills and things like this to enhance your life anyway, but at least that way you know that you're doing enough useful things in your gap year. So of course if you do want to travel, then this is possible, well hopefully after Corona. but there are also other things that you can be doing. For example, you can volunteer. Now I think when most people think about volunteering, they first of all think of like helping in a charity shop or something like that, which of course you can do, but there are so many other things which you can do as well. So I gave the example of tutoring A-level French. Now if you've just finished A-levels or another course, you're probably in the perfect position to do something like this because the knowledge is fresh in your brain. There are also other voluntary things that you can do. For example, you can volunteer with animals, you can volunteer with homeless people, or even just walking dogs or something. I know there's a brilliant charity called the Cinnamon Trust where you can volunteer to walk elderly people's dogs for them when they can't anymore. So basically, if you want to volunteer, then think outside the box. So next thing, travel. Now a lot of people will want to travel. The first thing you need to do is to decide where you want to go. Now for this, I would get onto YouTube, look at people's vlogs. I know Unjaded Jade, for example, she took a gap year and she has loads of travel vlogs. I'm a little bit obsessed. But this will give you an idea not only where you can go, but what you can do in that place, how expensive it is, what sort of food they have, if people speak English really well, things like this that will help you out. Because once you've decided where you want to go, then you can start planning everything else, such as the accommodation, your flights or transport, whether you need a visa or jabs. For example, we booked Thailand 3 weeks before we went, which was very risky, and we thought afterwards, oh my god, what if we need visas? Luckily we didn't, but we could have, so make sure you think about that as well. There are so many opportunities to combine travel and volunteering in one. For example, when we went to Thailand, the owners there at an elephant sanctuary, they said they accept people over to come and volunteer just looking after the elephants, which sounds so cute. Again, if you want to travel, then why not consider something like Camp Canada? That always sounds so fun. Business. Now this could be the perfect time to set up your own business. You have a whole year off. So I set up my mini French business, but there are so many other things you could do as well. You could tutor, you could sell artwork, literally anything you want. And if you need to earn money during your gap year, then this could be the perfect way to earn money but also enhance your skills as well at the same time. I know there'll be some people who doing things publicly or traveling just isn't right for them, which again is fine. There are so many things that you guys can be doing as well. For example, online courses. So I am currently doing one with Open University, but I know there's also websites, for example, FutureLearn. So I did a course with FutureLearn during my gap year just to enhance my UCAS personal statement. Now I know most people after they've finished their A-levels or their course they're doing, they will just want a bit of a brain break. But doing an online course like this just keeps your brain going a little bit, which can be really useful before you go to uni. In contrast, some people might want to retake an A-level or take another A-level if they want to keep their brain going, so that's another thing that you can do as well. And if you want to keep your brain going, then why not learn a new skill? For example, I actually learned to, well, I didn't learn to drive during my gap year, I failed my test during my A-levels, but I had more lessons and then I passed my test during my gap year with no minors. I think that just proves how I was so stressed during A-levels that I just didn't have time to do new skills like that, but during my gap year was just the perfect opportunity. Or why not learn a new instrument or pick up a new sport, for example? These are just some of the things that you could do during your gap year. And if you don't want to do something new, then why not use this time to pick up a skill or something that you haven't had time for whilst you've been studying? For example, I took my grade 8 piano during my gap year because I took A-level music and that just made me hate playing any sort of music. So when I got home from sixth form, I just didn't want to practice, I didn't want to do it. But then during my gap year, I really learned to love the piano again and I passed my grade 8. And so now you've decided what you want to do, you need to give yourself a time plan of when you want to do it. So for example, like I said earlier, I applied for my job in June and started in October. So that shows you how far back you need to be planning these things. If you do want to travel, then you need to be looking at the weather to see when is the best time to go to that country, whether you'll have enough time to save up for it. You're also going to need to budget. So the obvious thing is if you do want to travel, then you know you're going to need to get a job and save up for it. But also think about the other things you might have to pay for during your gap year. So for example, I was paying for a gym membership, some dance classes, fuel for my car, insurance, things like this. So make sure you have enough of those as well as to do the things that you want to do. And the last tip that I have for you is that if you are going to do anything in your gap year, then just do it full out, put yourself out there, get out of your comfort zone. I think everything that I did actually in my gap year was out of my comfort zone. So for example, this is a video of when we booked Thailand.
We've just bought flights, Beth. Your booking is complete. We are going to Thailand! Woo!
I was literally just like a ball of anxiety. I was so nervous. Again, I had never tutored or taught anyone, so I was so nervous to do the volunteering and set up my own business, but I am so glad that I did because it's given me so many more skills. For For example, just confidence generally. I feel like my confidence over my gap year grew so much. But then other skills as well, such as like cost and profit in a business. And then obviously it gave me work experience in teaching as well. So finally, what would I have done differently in my gap year if I was planning it again? So obviously taking a gap year was something that I'd never done, so it was really difficult to kind of budget, make sure I had enough for uni, make sure I had enough for travel and everything else I wanted to do. But looking back now, I kind of wish that when we went to Thailand, we'd have done it more as like a backpacking trip rather than a holiday. Because I mean, we stayed in like a 4-star hotel, flew with Emirates, and we didn't need to. And I think we could have done it for longer if we didn't do that. At the time, we just chose like a really good airline and stuff because I was so anxious, I just wanted to be safe. And so at the time that was right, but looking back now, I wish we'd have done it slightly differently. But other than this, I do feel like I balanced most things fairly well and I am happy with what I did during my gap year. But I feel like setting up my own business and travelling were probably two of the most beneficial things. And this is what I mean about the 60-40 approach. So I did the business for my CV, but it also ended up giving me loads of like job satisfaction as well, so that was for myself. Whereas I wanted to travel for my own enjoyment, but that ended up growing my confidence, so it also ended up growing my skills. So I really hope this video has been useful. If it has helped you, then don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button.